are coming now with a proposal of the law which might improve the situation in media soon, in case the legislative process will go well. One comment which I wanted to stress at the beginning, we are not trying to break the systems in the member states which work, especially when it comes to enforcement and oversight. We want to improve the situation everywhere, and this should be understood like that. So what's in the law? For the first time in the EU law, we are presenting safeguards to protect the editorial independence of the media. State should not interfere in editorial decisions. No public service media should become a propaganda channel of one party. We want the EU countries to set in law objective criteria for appointing the managers and governing boards. This should not be about party friends. The financing of public service media should be transparent and predictable, not used as a pressure tool. We also propose clear provisions with stronger safeguards against surveillance of journalists, because we strongly believe that no journalist should be spied on for doing their work. Second, you will find the rules mandating transparency, transparency of media ownership, transparency and fairness in the allocation of state advertising, and transparency of audience measurement systems, which play an important role in the advertising market. The third thing, we want to strengthen the European coordination of national media regulators. The existing European Group of Media Regulators, ERGA, will be upgraded and become the European Board for Media Services. The law states it very clearly. The board shall act in full independence. This also includes independence from the Commission. This is just a comment for those having any doubts about this, because this is in the law. We are creating new mechanisms, such as mutual assistance, to ensure coordination and solidarity in dealing with threats such as foreign propaganda. We have seen that Russia's information war and enforcement of sanctions presented some challenges in this respect. The Act includes new requirements that Member States should follow when it comes to national measures which affect the media and to assess media concentrations. The board will be able to give opinions on both those national measures and media concentrations. And finally, we want to propose, or we are proposing, more safeguards for media in the online environment. We want to make sure that platforms pay attention to media content produced according to professional standards. Platforms should inform the media before they remove their content. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that this act is necessary, addressing real evolving threats. We believe that this is a pragmatic solution, that this is something which is implementable in practice. For some, it will be too much. For some, it will be too little. For some who say the EU should not regulate the media landscape in Europe, we have a message. We believe the opposite, that we need to have good rules. When I see now the reactions, I think about that some expected that we will come with something like atomic bomb, some expected that we will come with some cosmetics. I believe we are somewhere in the middle. So this is what I mean, that we are proposing something which is pragmatic and which is, I believe, very proportionate. There is no single ideology behind that, because by this proposal we want to support diversity of opinions, and thus we are protecting the freedom of speech. Democracy will work only if journalists have the means and necessary protection to keep in check those in power and those with power, be it political or economic actors. The Media Freedom Act is designed first and foremost with journalists in mind. And I believe that we owe more protection to media, because we want a lot from the media. I believe that the media should oppose or present a stable and steady pillar of our European democracy European plus, of course, democratic systems in the member states. Last point, what we see from data and from some kind of real feel, we see that the trust to the media in Europe is decreasing. At the same time, disinformation is on the rise. And I don't think this is a coincidence. And I hope that the Media Freedom Act will play its part in helping restore the trust in the media. But I have no illusion it is a silver bullet. This is why it requires a collective effort from all sides. This law should also be seen as a piece of a broader puzzle. It is a part of our efforts to protect democracy at large and to bring some order in our digital information space. So thank you very much. I expect that we stand ahead of a maybe demanding legislative process, so I stand ready to help this process go on well, because, as I said before, we should have this Media Freedom Act in force as soon as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Vice President. Commissioner, over to you.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank very much Vera, because we worked extremely well together, Vera and myself, hand in hand, and thank you also for our teams. It has been really a team effort, and as you said, Vera, we really realize that what we are presenting today is extremely important for all of us, for the rule of law, for our democracy, for what we are in Europe. If you allow me, I will switch in French. Comment, pourquoi, quand? Comment on a travaillé? D'abord, je voudrais le dire, nous avons consulté extrêmement largement. Je veux dire du reste que moi-même, en participant à ce travail, j'ai découvert en Europe des médias, des groupes de médias, je ne vais pas les citer, mais qui sont vraiment exemplaires par rapport à l'objectif qui est le nôtre, qui ont déjà commencé à travailler, bien sûr, en protégeant totalement leur rédaction, bien sûr, en protégeant totalement les journalistes, bien sûr, en protégeant totalement les sources des journalistes, bien sûr aussi en protégeant la presse locale, bien sûr aussi en intégrant la révolution extraordinaire qui traverse ce secteur. Je parle bien sûr celle du numérique. Bien sûr aussi en ayant une approche transfrontalière. De tels groupes existent en Europe. De tels groupes ont intégré précisément tout ce dont nous allons parler aujourd'hui. Mais comme Vera l'a dit, on n'a pas l'ambition de contrôler ce secteur si particulier. On n'a pas l'intention d'imposer des organisations. Mais on a la ferme volonté, dans ce secteur, comme dans d'autres, d'utiliser l'exemplarité. Parce qu'au fond, si certains groupes de presse et de médias ont déjà réussi à aller dans ce domaine, alors pourquoi tous n'y vont pas? Et c'est la raison pour laquelle, dans cette première partie, le comment, nous avons décidé de proposer, et vous le verrez en annexe, des modèles vers lesquels nous espérons que chaque groupe de médias va tendre. Et à propos, vous serez vous-même, journalistes, ou ceux qui sont intéressés à ces questions, parfaitement fondés, de leur demander pourquoi, si certains n'y vont pas, ils n'y vont pas. C'est ce qu'on appelle la soft law dans cette régulation, qui est très importante. Je voulais juste l'indiquer en amont. Ça a été le comment. Des interactions extrêmement larges, un travail en profondeur, des consultations tous azimuts. On a pratiquement vu et entendu tout le monde. Et on a eu notre bureau ouvert, et Vera et moi-même, dans cette perspective, ainsi que ceux de nos collaborateurs. Alors pourquoi? Pourquoi? Vera l'a dit. Parce que, non seulement, bien sûr, c'est un projet, je ne vais pas répéter ce qui a été dit, et très bien par la vice-présidente, très structurant pour notre démocratie, mais parce que l'information n'est pas un bien comme les autres. Et ça figure explicitement dans ce projet de règlement. Parce qu'aussi, on a détecté des risques d'influence, certains très significatifs, et pas dans un pays, dans plus de 20 de nos États membres. Parce que, enfin, il est absolument indispensable de faire en sorte que l'information et ceux qui vont avoir la charge de la diffuser vis-à-vis de nos concitoyens puissent se répandre de façon le plus homogène possible sur le marché intérieur. Le marché intérieur de l'information, il n'existe pas encore. Alors on a travaillé déjà pour réguler, pour organiser notre espace informationnel, celui des contenus, et des contenus qui sont pratiquement les plus importants pour notre démocratie, notre vivre ensemble, il est encore beaucoup trop fragmenté. Donc il fallait avoir une vision globale, une vision commune, et c'est la raison pour laquelle nous proposons, encore une fois, dans le cadre du Media Freedom Act, un règlement qui va s'appliquer partout, de la même façon, pour la première fois, en Europe, selon des mêmes règles, avec, Vera l'a dit, l'objectif d'abord de garantir évidemment l'indépendance des rédactions et d'éviter toute ingérence. Et quand on parle d'ingérence, on peut parler évidemment de l'ingérence d'État, on a ça en tête. Il y a encore beaucoup de groupes, on n'a pas fait la distinction évidemment, on ne veut pas rentrer dans la nature même de l'actionnariat. Mais on n'est pas naïf. On sait bien que certains endroits dans lesquels les entreprises sont des entreprises dans lesquelles l'État est actionnaire, voire l'actionnaire unique, ces ingérences existent. On a des exemples en particulier dans d'autres pays que l'Union européenne, bien entendu, et en particulier en Russie, comme vous le savez. Mais il faut effectivement là-dessus être attentif. Mais les ingérences, elles peuvent exister aussi dans d'autres structures capitalistiques différentes. On les a identifiées. Donc il faut effectivement, là, protéger, prendre des mesures. Elles vont figurer de façon très explicite, notamment dans la toolbox, qui va être à la disposition de l'ensemble des médias pour protéger les rédacteurs, protéger les rédactions, protéger les journalistes, relever évidemment tout conflit d'intérêts, être aussi transparent sur ceux qui possèdent les médias. Pourquoi, du reste, veulent-ils posséder ces médias? Qui sont-ils et qu'en font-ils? Cette transparence, elle est absolument indispensable parce que, je le répète, l'information n'est pas un bien comme les autres. Le deuxième élément dans ce pourquoi, parce que nous avons constaté, comme vous, que compte tenu, on va dire les choses comme elles sont, de la crise que traverse le secteur des médias, à cause évidemment de la transformation numérique, j'en ai parlé il y a un instant, mais aussi parce que c'est un secteur qui est bien souvent trop sous-capitalisé. Et donc on a assisté à un nombre de concentrations important au cours de ces dernières années. Avec évidemment derrière, au cours des 10 dernières années, la perte d'une trentaine de pourcents, 30%, c'est énorme, des journalistes qui ont dû quitter ce métier, cette profession, pour en choisir une autre. Et c'est évidemment quelque chose que nous déplorons, Vera et moi-même, et que l'on veut inverser. Et puis également sur les entreprises elles-mêmes. Donc ce phénomène de concentration, on le voit, il est à l'œuvre. Et donc il faut désormais l'accompagner avec, c'est ce que Vera a dit, c'est très important, la création d'un nouveau conseil de médias, qui est au fond basé donc de RGA, que l'on va upgrader, si on peut dire, lui donner des compétences supplémentaires, pour pouvoir porter un jugement sur ces concentrations, cette fois-ci qualitatif, c'est une première mondiale, où effectivement ce conseil va pouvoir émettre un avis, et cet avis, il aura pour vocation de préserver la pluralité des médias. Ce qui fonde notre démocratie, c'est sa pluralité. Et la pluralité des cultures, la pluralité des sources d'information, la pluralité des opinions. Et donc, effectivement, c'est une première, donc, que ces tests de pluralisme et de faire en sorte que décidément, en ce qui nous concerne, le Media Freedom Act doit être l'instrument qui nous permet de garantir cette diversité. Et puis, je ne veux pas être trop long, donc je dirais juste un troisième point, si vous le permettez, sur la diversité et la pluralité en ligne. Parce qu'évidemment, on a déjà le DSA qui fonctionne bien. Donc, on va s'appuyer évidemment en ce qui concerne. On sait que beaucoup d'entre nous, des jeunes générations, mais pas que, utilisent leur smartphone pour avoir accès aux médias. Et donc, il est très important de préserver ce pluralisme. C'est un nouveau mode d'accès, évidemment, des médias. Et donc, en s'appuyant sur les règles horizontales du DSA et en suivant l'approche d'un plugging vertical, le MFA va instaurer un mécanisme qui va permettre aux médias d'interagir rapidement, de façon structurée, avec les grandes plateformes, notamment lorsqu'elles enlèvent le contenu, Donc ça, il faut vraiment qu'il y ait une discussion, qu'on voit pourquoi elle le fasse, et pas de façon, je dirais, unilatérale. Que ce soit encadré par des règles démocratiques, et pas uniquement en suivant des terms and conditions qui pourraient être un peu aléatoires. Et évidemment, permettre, là aussi, d'avoir des capacités de recours si jamais on estime qu'il y a des choses qui ne devraient pas se passer, qui se sont produites. Alors pour le reste, évidemment, le DSA fonctionne, on n'a rien changé, et je le redis, ceci n'a rien à voir avec une media exemption, que ce soit clair, hein, c'est clairement dit, c'est uniquement un lieu de dialogue où on va pouvoir précisément interagir et veiller à ce que cette pluralité en ligne soit évidemment maintenue. Voilà ce que je voulais dire en quelques mots. Donc le dernier, c'est quand. Donc évidemment, c'est un règlement. On veut qu'il s'applique, évidemment, comme l'a dit Vera, le plus rapidement possible. Donc ça va dépendre évidemment derrière de nos co-législateurs, mais on va faire en sorte que ça se passe le plus rapidement possible. On a pu démontrer avec d'autres textes que nous avons portés qu'on peut aller vite quand il s'agit vraiment d'une urgence. Et pour nous, c'est vraiment une urgence démocratique. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Commissaire. So you will have seen we have already published the press material. There was a notification sent out, so everything is online by now. You'll find more answers to your questions. And now let's go to your immediate questions. And I'll start here in the press room with Thomas.
It's Tomasz Bielecki of Deutsche Welle and Gazeta Wyborcza. I have two questions, both to Vice President and Commissioner. Firstly, in how and in what way such regulation as European Media Freedom Act would have had changed European Commission and other EU institutions' tools and capacity to react to cases such as Hungarian KESMA, which did take over the huge number of Hungarian mass media, or Polish state energy company Orlen, which recently bought a huge number of local mass media. And secondly, there's the huge problem of the advertisement flows of state and state-owned companies which are being used, for example, in Poland, to subsidize the mass media politically loyal to the government in the way extremely disproportionate to their market share or leadership share. In what way the new regulation, the Media Freedom Act, would address this problem of such a distortion of the media pluralism and media market? Thank you.
Thank you very much. You asked about how this tool will help. Of course, to have European rules helps us to act. And we could not act in the previous years, although we saw the trends, the concrete cases, also the cases which we saw in Hungary and Poland and some other member states. So now we will be equipped in case of the breach of the EU law, this media law, to act and to launch the procedure which you know as the normal method which the Commission uses as the guardian of the treaty. How it could help, what might be the change in the member state where the things go wrong. First thing, there should not be any state interference. This is very clearly stipulated in the law, including no surveillance. And we know that there is a suspicion that in several member states the new technologies have been used against the journalists. Second thing, there is a protection of public service media as truly public service media, not state media or party media. So we do not want to see any financial pressure on the public service media. We want the financing to be sustainable, predictable, something the board and the managers can rely on, that they can do the job of the public service media. And of course also the procedures leading to appointments of the directors and the members of the boards have to be transparent, non-discriminatory and clear also to the public, because public service media are the how to say, family silver, or should be in every member state, and public service media should belong to the public. Concentration. This is a special thing which we want to get under control, because what we saw in Hungary with the concentration of the media power in KESMA entity, we believe that KESMA should not go bigger, and that the Media Freedom Act will help to stop the trend. But this is not about Hungary. This is about all the member states where there might be the appetite to concentrate the power through the media, and in case it would have the potential to damage the pluralism of opinions and the healthy media market, then we will be able to act. The fourth thing, allocation of state advertising. You mentioned it yourself. We see that this is happening. We want much more transparency. We want the public authorities to make public how much they pay in advertising and which media are paid, so that there is also some public control over the financial flows. I always say that, of course, the public authorities have to use the advertising, but there are two different things. If you use it for announcing the things you have to announce, or whether you are buying the friendly positions of the editors and of the journalists. So more transparent, non-discriminatory, it will be monitored. And number five, requirements regarding national measures. Also, this is a reaction on several things which we could not address in the past. Concretely, for instance, in Poland, the action of or the threatening of withdrawing the license to TVN, for instance. This is something which will have to be, such decisions of the state will have to be justified. It will be clearly explained that this is not the decision which goes against some concrete media because they are not comfortable for the government. So these are 5 points which we believe will improve the situation of media to remain that steady pillar of democracy in each member state. And on the advertising, I mentioned the transparency matter. I have some data here, but I will not keep you longer with that.
Vera answered very clearly and precisely to these questions. I may add two more things, if you allow me. First, of course, we don't want to comment any cases pending. But we really understand what you have in mind in your questions, and we understand also the countries that you have in mind in your questions. But let me tell you that, of course, we have been asked by some of these medias when they had problems, but we had no tools. So we interacted then with the government, but we had no tools. We had no references. So now we will have a tool. That will be a big change. And they were saying, look, but what we do is totally align with your regulations. What wrong things are we doing? So now we know exactly what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. The second point, of course, we know exactly also references that you have in mind. It's true that in some member states, huge amount or significant amount, more than 50%, more than 60%, more than 80% of the advertising has been used in public TV, for example, for one party instead of another one. We know, we are aware of this, and this is why, as Vera said, now it will be an obligation, which did not exist before, in terms of transparency, to say exactly what's happening in this grant, who is paying, who is benefiting, to be extremely clear, and of course things which will not be done on an equal basis will not be, of course, things that will be authorized, of course. So this is now it will be for discussion. Last point that I didn't mention is that we will have also some key criteria to be able to measure the audience. Audience is extremely important, and especially in platforms, but also in all the media. So we will have clear rules to establish this and to measure this audience, which will be the same everywhere in Europe. And I think it's a big plus also for the media industry.
Thank you very much. I'll take a second question from the room. Markus.
Yeah, Markus Becker with Der Spiegel. I'd like to ask two questions, please. There has been some harsh criticism from German publishers' associations saying that the Commission is trying to take away the freedom of publishers to influence the media they are ideally and economically responsible for by basically drawing a firewall between them and their editors. And at the same time, there is a passage in the law about the financing of public service media, which might be good and well in countries like Poland or Hungary, but where in other countries where public service media are very strong, like, for example, in Germany, they might be even become more dominant in the market. So my question is in these respects, the law geared too much towards countries where there are problems with media freedom, and are they actually maybe even endangering media freedom in countries where this is not the case? And the second question, the boards. Is it really independent? Because, of course, in the law, it says that the Commission only sends a person without voting rights. But then again, when I look into the text, I read lines like what the board is supposed to do things when requested by the Commission, in agreement with the Commission, upon request of the Commission. So in practice, is the board really independent, or is the Commission, after all, going to have a strong influence on what the board is doing? Thank you.
The second one, and I will answer the first one. Yes, I know the criticism from especially German publishers. I had 2 long opportunities to consult. The position of the German publishers was do not regulate at all. And I tried to explain what we want to do, and this is what we are presenting today, that we are not going to regulate the media themselves, but the space for media, which, on the contrary, from what we hear in this criticism, tries to increase the independence and introduce the safeguards for the editors to ring-fence their decision-making and to keep the independence and pluralism of opinions high. So I think that this is some misunderstanding. I see that I will have to discuss further the case, and I, of course, will discuss not only with the stakeholders and with the publishers, but also with the members of the parliament and with the ministers of culture who might likely have this Media Freedom Act on their tables. The second part of the first question was, public service media. Indeed, I mentioned it in my opening speech that we want to keep the things which work well in the member states untouched. And we want to increase the safeguards where they are missing or where we see something is not functioning. And I have to recognize also, after intense consultations which I had in all the member states, that the German system seems to be very robust, being built over decades, reacting on concrete cases and responding with improvements. Also now we see something happening, that there might be some more safeguards for ARD. So I have kept my promise, which I made in Germany, that we will not destroy the things which function well. I think that the law shows that we are on board on that.
Juste un point, donc on est parfaitement au courant et en contact très étroit, encore une fois, avec l'association des éditeurs allemands, et on les a beaucoup rencontrés. Je crois vraiment qu'on leur a apporté tous les éléments pour les tranquilliser. Sur le sujet, comme vient de le dire Vera, il n'y a aucune tentative ni velléité de contrôle de quoi que ce soit, et certainement pas de changer, encore une fois, l'indépendance des rédactions et des entreprises. On met un cadre uniquement. Ce cadre a été très bien réexpliqué par Vera. Donc là-dessus, vraiment, on est très serein, et je pense que tous les stakeholders, les parties prenantes peuvent l'être. Peut-être donc un petit mot sur l'indépendance, puisque je crois que c'est la question, l'indépendance du Conseil. Je crois qu'on ne peut pas être plus clair qu'on l'a été dans le cadre de cette loi. Le Conseil européen des médias, il est indépendant, je dirais nativement. Et donc, il ne peut recevoir aucune instruction de qui que ce soit. Et je le redis avec force, il n'y a donc aucune tentative ni risque de prise de pouvoir par la Commission. C'est extrêmement clair. Et en fait, le Conseil, comme je l'ai dit, il va remplacer le groupe des régulateurs européens, l'ERGA, qui était un groupe d'experts, et donc il va donc maintenant être upgradé avec donc des responsabilités nouvelles. C'est donc un nouvel organe consultatif, comme ERGA l'était. Il va agir, je le répète encore une fois, de façon totalement indépendante, en s'acquittant évidemment des missions qui sont les siennes. Il pourra même rendre des avis, on l'a dit tout à l'heure, dans certains cas, notamment sur la concentration des médias. Et ces avis sont évidemment non contraignants, mais ils seront publics. Donc évidemment, on ne prend pas le pouvoir avec des avis non contraignants. On a voulu vraiment, je le redis, là encore, avoir un organe indépendant, mais qui va enfin pouvoir regarder et s'exprimer de façon très claire si il y a des sujets qui peuvent, encore une fois, mettre en péril potentiellement le risque de pluralité des médias, en particulier dans le cadre des concentrations. Voilà, donc je crois que là les choses sont extrêmement claires, et on aura évidemment donnera toutes les garanties à ceux qui avaient encore quelques inquiétudes qui sont, je crois, peut-être fondées en termes de questions, mais illégitimes, encore une fois, dans la volonté de la Commission et dans son application.
Merci beaucoup. I will come back to the room in a moment, but I have a long list of questions also online, so I want to give colleagues following online the opportunity. First on my list is Moitza.
Yes, thank you for the question. My question is for the Madam Vice President. At the presentation of the Rule of Law report in July, you said that it was also the situation in Slovenia that made you start to think about these legally binding rules, which would apply across all the European Union member states. As you probably know, the journalists of the RTV Slovenia have been on a work to rule strike now for 3 months. My question is, what is your message to them, and what can the Commission do actually to make their demands heard by the current program board and the Director General? Thank you very much.
Freedom Act, we are giving the message to all journalists that they might be better protected in the future, in the hopefully near future, against the attacks and different barriers which should prevent them or could prevent them from doing their job freely. Freely is an important thing. When it comes to Slovenia, I have to admit that I will not be so political correct as Thierry. He said we do not mention the states, but I can tell you that the case of the unstable or uncertain financing for the Slovenian press agency was a headache for the Commission, because we saw that the agency is in a very difficult situation, and that the state is not taking it seriously enough. I mean, the obligation to keep the financing of the public service media high enough to let this agency ongoing. So this is a message for all the member states, all the journalists. I think that we owe it to the media and to the journalists to add some more safeguards to our European rules.
Okay, then the next question goes to Katalin, also online.
Thank you very much, Christian. I am Katalin Halmai, Hungarian journalist. And I have a follow-up question on my Polish colleague's question on the public service media. Did I understand correctly that if the Commission sees state interference, if the Commission sees financial pressure or public service media becoming a propaganda machine, on the basis of this draft law, you could launch an infringement procedure? And how can the Commission prove that the public service media has become a propaganda machine? Thank you very much.
Well, there is always, in cases of some possible breaches of EU law, there is always stage one when we need to have a good and open and thorough dialogue with the respective member state. And then, in case it doesn't help, we now will have the Media Freedom Act, which will enable us to act. When it comes to public service media, there are some criteria which say that the funding should be sufficient and predictable, and also the procedures leading to appointments of the main figures, be it the manager or the director or the members of the board, should be non-discriminatory and transparent. So these are the criteria against which we will have to assess the situation in the respective member state. And then, yes, as you know, we have, once we have the EU law, we can even use the infringement procedure, which might lead to the European Court of Justice, which might give us more light into how to interpret this EU law. But this is the general method which we can use always in such cases. I would prefer the dialogue, so I would like to stay on stage one.
I'll take one more question online, and then I'll come back to the colleagues in the room. Tanya Milewska.
Agency. I know that this doesn't pertain to candidate countries.
Tanya, could you start again? You
yes.
Spoke too quickly.
Okay, again. So Tanya Milewska from the Macedonian News Agency. I know that this doesn't pertain to candidate countries or negotiating countries. However, I would like to know if you foresee some sort of surveillance of these candidate countries, especially given that North Macedonia and Albania are now starting the negotiations, and that the situation with the media is worsening. For example, in North Macedonia, where state advertisement, there are negotiations between the associations of journalists and the government, but it seems that the government is pushing to bring back state advertisement. And also when it comes to party influence in public media, and especially the national agency, you mentioned predictability of finances, etc., which is not the case in public media for now. So is it something that you can do to stop countries like North Macedonia going the wrong way, even during the negotiating process? Thank you.
Well, we made very clear also by including the situation of media under our rule of law report that we find the media situation as a very important element for assessing the quality and sustainability of democracy. And I believe that also the situation of media in the accession states plays a role, that this is something which is in the radar of our negotiators. And as you know, the result of the negotiations is the approximation of the national rules and approaches with the European ones. So I cannot tell you that the Media Freedom Act will now help the situation in Macedonia, but for the representatives of the accession countries, this is a clear signal that the EU has been moving towards stronger protection of the media, and that it will be something which will also be somehow discussed and maybe required through the negotiations.
Maybe adding two things. This is an internal market, of course, instrument. So it means that when you're joining EU, you need to make sure that you comply with the internal market rules. So that's really something that, of course, the candidate country will have to fulfill, as with other aspects of our internal market. And by the way, any country willing to join EU has to integrate and respect, of course, our acquis, which is extremely important. And also, if there is a candidate country, he will have the status of being an observer at ERGA. So, I mean, we will have a lot of tools to make sure that that everything will go in the right direction.
Thank you very much. So, as promised, I'm coming back to you now, please.
Thank you. Nicholas Wallace for MLEX. If the Board for Media Services decides that there is a problem with media freedom or media pluralism in a particular member state, does the national regulator of that member state really have to care? Does the Board have any teeth, any power to do anything if you have a regulator that's perhaps not adequately independent from the politics of that country, or at least doesn't share the Board's conclusions about what's going on its territory? Thank you.
Well, yes, the national regulators needs to take the opinion definitely into account. So that's exactly what is in the MFA.
Okay, thank you.
And if they don't do, I mean, they will have to explain why they don't do and why they don't fulfill the recommendation.
Sorry.
It's national.
Wait for a moment till it turns red. Okay.
Yes.
Then a quick follow-up.
So the final decision is national. Thank you.
Oh, okay, thank you. Over to you.
Hello, Blaž Muhorčić from Slovenian Press Agency. I have a follow-up to my colleague's question. What this new act brings to prevent the situation like it was happening with the Slovenian Press Agency and also now with Slovenian National Broadcaster? So what's new, what will be better now to protect this and to prevent this? And also, do you have any comment on what is happening on the RTV Slovenia? Thank you.
I think I replied before that the law stipulates very clearly the safeguards or guarantee for the public service media regarding the funding. We are not prescribing any method, be it fees directly collected from the citizens or the national budget. We are not prescribing any of those, but we insist in the law that the funding must be sustainable and that the public service media must have sufficient tools, money and people to do the truly high-quality public service. I don't have any specific comment on the situation of the TV at this moment.
You know, maybe if I want to add maybe one comment. Now we have safeguards for public media, and this is in the law, and that's for the first time, and it did not exist before. So if there is abuse, of course, we can launch infringement. We didn't have the legal basis before in the toolbox. And as Vera just said, public service media have a public mission and they need stable and adequate funding and financing. And this is, again, fully recognized in the MFA. For example, we will look at appointment also. we may look also at dismissals in public service media by the government. And here again, we have the tool to mention infringement if we believe it's appropriate. It was true also for the previous question.
Thank you very much. All right, one more question in the room, and then I'll go one more time back online.
Thanks. Clécy Goujar from Politico. Some press publishers organizations have said that the proposal could actually put some press in countries with rule of law issues at risk, because their argument is that it could put them under the oversight of regulators that are not so independent anymore. Do you have a comment on that? And then the second question is about a potential rule that could make it harder for social media to moderate the content of news outlets. And I was wondering the extent to which you think this could lead to more disinformation online. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. You can notice that, as I said before, the media condition, the situation of media in each member state is covered by the rule of law report. And we see the gaps. We see the countries where the media have stable, relatively strong situation. And we see the countries where there are gaps in transparency of ownership or in knowledge of who owns media, in independence of authorities overseeing the market. And so we have sufficient data to make a judgment that concrete things need improvements in many member states. This is not only about one or two member states. On social media, I think Thierry will complement nicely, because he signed first under the digital services Act, Digital Services Act. We try to introduce some kind of special treatment for the content developed, produced, and the content which wants to be published in the digital space, content produced by the recognized professional media. And we do not want the platforms to have such an easy way of removing the legal content without prior announcement. So this prior announcement, prior alert to the recognized professional media is the difference which we are now introducing. In other words, we are not introducing any kind of media exemption, but rather a more careful process which might lead to some removals of the content.
Okay, on these two points, very quickly on the first one, just to complement what Vera rightly said, the board, of course, gathered all national independent regulators, and the board will act together. So that's I think, a very good way to avoid the kind of risks that you mentioned. Et pour peut-être la seconde question sur la responsabilité des plateformes et aussi le problème de la désinformation. D'abord, je voudrais le redire le plus clairement possible. Les responsabilités des plateformes restent absolument intactes. Elles ne sont absolument pas remises en cause par le MFA. Elles doivent agir en particulier, c'est le cadre du DSA, vous le savez, très rapidement sur des contenus qui créent des risques sociétaux. On en a longuement parlé lors de la mise en œuvre, lors des discussions sur le DSA, y compris, encore une fois, sur la base, je le rappelle, c'est un sujet sur lequel on a beaucoup travaillé avec Vera, de leurs engagements dans le code de désinformation. Et vous vous souvenez qu'on a encore une réunion, il n'y a pas longtemps, Vera, avec l'ensemble des acteurs qui sont de plus en plus importants et impliqués. Et donc, la question que vous évoquez, elle est évidemment d'actualité, mais elle ne concerne pas du tout le MFA. Mais lorsqu'il s'agit de contenus médiatiques légitimes que les plateformes retirent sur la base de leurs conditions d'utilisation, alors évidemment la situation change. Et c'est ça qu'on adresse. Je le répète, le DSA, il n'a pas pour vocation de faire respecter toutes les conditions d'utilisation qu'une plateforme décide de fixer. Et si les terms and conditions ne sont pas destinés à protéger les risques sociétés, alors, évidemment, c'est le pluralisme des médias, inclus dans le MFA, qui prévaut. C'est exactement comme ça que fonctionne le plugging dont on a parlé. Merci.
Thank you very much. We have to shortly wrap up, so I'll take two last questions. I'll go to Maria online. Maria Psara.
Hello, it's Maria Psara I have to say that, with Efemerida των Συντακτών, Greece. I have two questions. I'm confused with the part of mandatory and voluntarily proposal. I mean, which part are mandatory and which is voluntarily? And are you optimistic that you will have a deal? I mean, that the Council will accept the proposal? And a second question on Greece, because recently in Greece we see several things. There are no news for the murder of Yorgos Karaivas, a journalist that was murdered 2 years ago, if I'm not wrong. Another journalist was under surveillance, and the place of Greece in the Media Freedom Index is declining. First of all, are you concerned for all these, and how did the situation in Greece influence this proposal today? Thank you.
What is mandatory and obligatory? We have to read precisely the text, so maybe the technical meeting afterwards will help to define, but I think that you have in mind what is legally binding regarding the opinions of the media regulators. So you have to read the text precisely, because there are the non-legally binding opinions which are issued by the board and also by the Commission at some stage. On the situation in Greece, I think that we reflected objectively the situation in Greece in the field of media in our rule of law report. Indeed, the murdered journalist and now the cases which are under parliamentary investigation regarding the alleged surveillance of the journalists attract our attention, and the cases which appeared, the cases or the suspicions that the journalists might have been under surveillance, of course, inspired us for including this very strong text on surveillance of journalists into the Media Freedom Act. I am going to Greece in a few weeks' time, and I will discuss with all relevant partners also the situation of media in Greece. I want to understand the situation by being there and hearing authentic testimonies and information.
Maybe one thing I would like to add for the first question. Again, I think Vera, you are right to say that it is very clearly explained the difference between obligations and recommendations are very clear in the text. You will see, and of course, everything which is in the toolbox is a recommendation, and the rest is mandatory. So you will be able to see it. It's, I think, extremely well detailed. Peut-être que pour le deuxième aspect de votre question, je crois qu'il faut être extrêmement clair. C'est uniquement dans des cas extrêmement précis que nos lois autorisent d'aller écouter, espionner tel ou tel individu, et c'est essentiellement et uniquement lorsque il y a un risque pour la sécurité nationale. Et c'est évidemment sous le contrôle du juge que cette décision est prise. Alors je vais être très clair avec vous. En aucun cas, l'activité de journaliste ne peut ni ne doit être considérée comme un risque à la sécurité nationale.
Merci beaucoup. We'll take one last question. It's Soriana, please.
Do you hear me well?
Yep.
Thank you. I'm Zoriana Stepanenko from Ukrainian Service of Radio Free Europe. So I have the question regarding the media law in Ukraine. As a candidate to join the European Union, Ukraine is required to reform its media laws, and the according bill passed its first reading in the Ukrainian parliament. However, it has been criticized a lot among the Ukrainian social and public society because it would expand the powers of the National Council of Television and Radio Broadcasting, the state broadcasting regulator, allowing it to regulate online and print media outlets, invalidate the registration and license of any media outlet, and block online media without a court order. So this bill is currently under evaluation by the EU and the Council of Europe, and the according recommendations should be issued by the end of September. So my question is, do you have any preliminary estimation of this Ukrainian media bill, and should it be changed a little bit and be more pertinent to the European standards? Thank you.
Yeah, I have to apologize. I cannot give you any preliminary assessment because indeed, as you said yourself, it's currently under evaluation. I am in contact with Alexander Tkachenko, the Minister of Culture of Ukraine. I might meet him when I come to Lviv again in the coming weeks because I want to understand the reasons for the law, the context, the purpose, something which is not visible on the paper because we work with the draft of the law, and then we will do a thorough assessment which is already now ongoing so that we can continue the negotiations with clarified position of the EU.
Thank you very much. I have to apologize to those who I could not take anymore. We took a full hour, though, to take as many questions as possible. We'll have to continue now with the midday briefing, but I would invite all that could not ask a question and also all others to join us again for the technical briefing, which will be after the midday at 12:45, where there's still further possibility to get clarifications on the proposal. Thank you very much, Vice President and Commissioner. Thank you all.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our midday briefing. Thank you also for following us live on Europe by satellite. Today is Friday, 16th of September. Let me start our announcements with details on the President's agenda for the next days. As I already announced yesterday, the President will chair on Sunday the meeting of the College of Commissioners, which was moved forward exceptionally because of the very busy agenda of next week. I do not have yet details for you regarding what is on the agenda of the College of Commissioners, because the meeting of the heads of cabinets will be convened this afternoon. After that, once we have the confirmation, we are going to send you the information through the usual channels, social media, and our usual information procedures. Then, on Monday, the President will be in London, where she will take part in the state funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. After that, the President will travel to New York to participate in the UN General Assembly and in a series of sideline events and bilateral meetings. The President will notably take part in the opening of the general debate of this year's General Assembly. She will attend numerous other events, including, and that is not an exhaustive list, the Christchurch Core Leaders Summit with President Macron and Prime Minister Ardern, a leaders event on COP15 on biodiversity, called Countdown to COP15, a Global Fund pledging conference chaired by President Biden, an event hosted by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and additionally, on Thursday, the President will deliver a keynote address at Princeton University. We will publish shortly a press release where you can find more details on the activities of the President, of Executive Vice President Timmermans, HRVP, and college members, other college members that will participate in next week's General Assembly in New York. With that, I will now pass the floor to Adalbert, who has some interesting news for you regarding mobility, news that will also be of practical relevance to you on Sunday.
Indeed, thank you, Dana. Environ 3000 villes européennes participent à la Semaine européenne de la mobilité qui démarre aujourd'hui. Vous le savez, les énergies fossiles sont chères et polluantes. Le transport représente presque un quart des émissions de gaz à effet de serre de l'Union européenne et elle continue à augmenter. Des changements sont plus urgents que jamais. Cette semaine, nous aurons tous l'opportunité de voir comment, en mettant à jour nos infrastructures et nos habitudes de mobilité, nous pouvons économiser de l'énergie, de l'argent et même de la frustration, celle d'être bloqué dans des embouteillages. Parmi les activités proposées figurent plus de 1000 journées sans voiture, des festivals autour du vélo, des expositions de véhicules électriques, ainsi que des mesures permanentes mises en place par des villes participantes. Pour savoir ce qui se passe près de chez vous, je vous invite à consulter le site web de la Semaine européenne de la mobilité que vous trouverez dans notre Daily News.
Merci beaucoup Adalbert, fort intéressant. Et ensuite, je vous rappelle que les ministres de l'Agriculture et de la Pêche sont à Prague pour une réunion informelle. Commissioner Wojciechowski is representing the Commission at that meeting. The focus of the discussions in Prague is on current food security issues, future trends and solutions to help reduce hunger in the world. Ministers will also discuss the situation on agricultural markets and the sustainability of European and global food production. A press conference with Commissioner Wojciechowski will take place at around 1 p.m. Of course, you can follow it on Europe by satellite. Finally, let me welcome a group of visitors that is joining us in the press room today. Welcome to the European Commission and to our press room. It is about a group of journalists and journalist students from the United States that are here with us brought by the RIAS Berlin Commission. It's lovely to have you here. I hope you'll find something interesting or relevant for what you do, and I hope that we're going to make a nice impression. So, colleagues, the stakes are high. With that, I'm only going to remind you all that we will limit this midday to 40 minutes maximum, because at 12:45 we will have a technical briefing on the European Media Freedom Act that was just presented to you by Vice President Jourova and Commissioner Breton. So let's start. Who has questions for us today? Please raise your hand if that is the case. I see a question from Weihua. Yes, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I think kept my hands raised from the previous briefing. But anyway, I don't know. I don't know. It's okay. I just asking. I mean, related to the previous briefing by the commissioner on the media thing. Is that okay? And basically, you know, there's a lot of talk about diversity, pluralism, and non-discrimination. But, you know, if you look at the watch the EU media, I'm turning on the Euronews. I mean, with all the respect for my colleague, I mean, you don't really see the diversity, plurality when, you know, in discussion about Russian-Ukraine conflict. I mean, because I think there is such a strong political correctness in Europe these days on the issue. So I don't know, is this new act is going to encourage more lively debate on this without just dismissing those different opinions as disinformation or propaganda. You know, could you talk about that? Thank you.
And I hope that you had opportunities, and you will have opportunities in the technical briefing to ask additional questions on the Media Freedom Act. First of all, allow me to say that we prize enormously, and for us, the media freedom and the quality and the editorial independence of media is a value, a political priority, and something on which we are working, and we are encouraging everybody to work on at every single level. This is Europe, this is what we stand for, and this is extremely important. Second, you will understand that I will not discuss here the editorial policy of media outlets that you may like or you may not. So this is for you to make your judgments on the editorial line of various media and to respectfully disagree or agree with what they are broadcasting or they are transmitting. The Media Freedom Act is about ensuring the editorial independence and the means for media in order to accomplish this noble duty for society. And this is as far as I would go in commenting what you refer to as the editorial line of a specific newspaper or TV channel for that matter. Right. Oliver, you have a question. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you. Always happy to take suggestions on media plurality from representatives of the totalitarian Chinese communist regime. Anyway, since we're talking about totalitarianism and since the Ukrainian-Russian, or actually the war in Russia against Ukraine was mentioned, the Commission President said she would like to see Putin in court, presumably at the International Criminal Court. Can you tell us what the European Commission is planning to do in order to make that happen? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Oliver, I think you referred to a certain interview that the President gave while in Kyiv yesterday. And there, just to be very precise about what was asked about and about what was said, the question and the answer sequence referred to the fact that the President said that Putin must lose this war and he must be held accountable for his acts, for what he did, and the president insisted that this is something which is important to her. Then asked whether Putin is likely to be in front of a court to be brought to justice. The president said that she finds that she thinks this is possible. This is indeed a possibility. I would be very happy now to give the floor to Christian to give you an overview of how we support the Ukrainian authorities and actually the community of states and institutions who are supporting them in relation to investigating war crimes, the aim being that the perpetrators of the atrocity taking place in Ukraine are being brought to justice. And we have launched numerous tracks of work, financial, legislative, operational, to support that very important work. Christian.
Thank you very much, Dana. That indeed gives me the opportunity to give you a little update and remind of what we have been doing to support the investigation and the prosecution of war crimes committed in Ukraine. This is obviously a task for prosecutors and not for the Commission, but we are strongly, as the EU, supporting this work, and a lot of work is underway. As you might remember, a joint investigation team has been set up with Ukraine to collect evidence and investigate war crimes against humanity and crimes against humanity. It consists of Poland, Lithuania, Ukraine, Latvia, Estonia, and Slovakia, supported by Eurojust. And also in April, the International Criminal Court agreed to join forces and to participate in the joint investigation team, and we continue to encourage further member states to join as well. Then second, on 25th of April, the Commission proposed to amend the Eurojust regulation, where the idea was to give the agency the legal possibility to analyze, preserve, and share evidence on war crimes, and this amendment was already enacted on the 1st of June. Also practically, the EU stands ready to support the investigations, for instance, by providing expertise such as forensic experts, equipment or training possibilities. This is also underway, and following a letter by Commissioner Reinders in spring, 6 member states have agreed to deploy over 50 experts by now. Also, together with the Council, the Commission is coordinating the support provided by the Member States to the Ukrainian Prosecutor's General Office. Again, a lot of work is underway, and it's very clear that we are strongly supporting it and that there can be no impunity for these horrible crimes.
Thank you very much, Christian. Are there any additional questions for Christian on this subject? If so, please raise your hand. I see several hands up. I'm not sure it's about that, so let's give it a try. Anne, est-ce que ta question est pour Christian à ce sujet? Yes? Well, let's give it a try. No, it's not about that, so yes. Any other questions for Christian? I don't see that, unless David has a question for Christian. So, David Price, go ahead.
I have a question on the previous subject, the Media Freedom Act. One on Ukraine is about the lack of media freedom in Ukraine, where the critical media has been closed down, and the Commission has talked about compliance of candidates. I'm wondering what sort of scenario do you see about raising the freedom of information and freedom of media in Ukraine? And this has implications on quite a number of subjects, including the one you've just talked about. The second one is on the Media Freedom Act. I'll leave that to later if you wish.
that the sound was of a very bad quality. We guessed some keywords from your question, and what I understood was media freedom and Ukraine. And that being the case, I can give very briefly the floor to, I need to decide, Anna, to tell us how we raise, of course, this important subject with our candidate countries in all the relevant fora, in all the relevant meetings. As you know, the enlargement process is a very structured one, and obviously such important subjects as media freedom are raised regularly.
Yes, so I think that, broadly speaking, of course, in all our partner countries, media freedom and media pluralism is a key pillar of any democratic society, of course, and this is also an issue that, of course, we're following very closely in Ukraine and of course, the rest of our partners. And I would just like to recall that, I can't remember now the date, but there was already in first reading the Rada approved a reform on the media law. This is, of course, an important step on Ukraine's path towards the EU and to address one of the priority reforms identified in the Commission's opinion on Ukraine's EU membership application. And, of course, the law needs to ensure a competitive media market with clear rules for all, an independent regulator, and alignment with EU Audiovisual Services Directive. So the Commission will assess the draft voted in first reading, and we will be making further recommendations to Ukraine to ensure the alignment, of course, to the EU rule. And I think that you've just heard also Commissioner Jourova say herself in the press conference that, of course, we are in contact with the Ukrainian authorities on this issue.
Thank you very much. Anna, are there any additional questions on this subject or on any other enlargement-related issues that Anna could take? I believe Christian is interested. Christian, est-ce que tu as une question pour Anna? Je vois ta main levée.
Oui, mais en fait, c'est une question qui est beaucoup plus longue qui a trait au financement.
Christian, je suis désolée, je dois t'interrompre. Nous ne comprenons rien. Les sons, la qualité du son n'est pas bonne. Tu dois faire quelque chose avec ton micro, j'imagine. On essaie encore une fois?
Non, mais je crois que ça ne marchera pas toute façon. C'est pas grave. Merci.
Malheureusement, ça ne marche pas. On essaie de revenir avec Christian plus tard. Et je donnerai la parole à Anne. Anne, vas-y. Est-ce qu'on a Anne? Anne a des problèmes de micro aussi. Décidément, on ne montre pas les meilleurs visages au niveau technique pour nos visiteurs aujourd'hui. Bon, on y travaillera. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions pour nous aujourd'hui sur d'autres sujets? Yes. Lawrence, go ahead. All right, that's it. Let me try Stefano. Make it work, Stefano. The stakes are high.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Stefano Porcello, Lex. I read some reaction from some industry association regarding the package of the Commission against the energy price crisis, and what I read is that some industries are not satisfied with it, and say the Commission proposals are not enough. So, did you read these reactions, and what is your reaction to the statements? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question, Stefano. So first of all, we put our proposals on the table 2 days ago. We are now at that very important stage where they are being studied and debated. We welcome, of course, all contributions and viewpoints. This is part of the process. and we hope that we will be able to have an approval of this important package of proposals as soon as possible, because our firm conviction is that they will provide relief to consumers and to small businesses at these very challenging times. But Tim.
Yeah, thanks, Stefano. As Dana says, I mean, we're in that phase now where we're seeing lots of reactions to these proposals from all kinds of different people. We, of course, pay very close attention to those, but we are not in the habit of then reacting to the reactions. We would be here all day and all night, and you wouldn't have time to write your stories about them anyway. But I think generally what's worth saying is that we've been putting in place over a number of months, going back a year, in fact, almost, measures to deal with high energy prices. These are measures which we've given, tools which we've given member states, which they've been using. There's tools which we've put in place at European level, and this is another step in that. And this is one of the tools which have been presented. As the President said, as the Executive Vice President and the Commissioner said, there is more coming. There is more work coming on liquidity. There is more work coming on state aid. There's a whole range of things that we're doing. Member states have tools that they can use. We have tools that we use at our level. And of course, we continue to react to the seriousness of the situation. We believe that the measures put on the table this week are a significant contribution to help European industries and to also help European households and citizens to face the pressure of high energy bills this coming winter.
Thank you very much. Any additional questions for Tim in relation to this energy package that we put forward 2 days ago? I think, first of all, Stefano has a follow-up, so go ahead, Stefano.
Yes, thank you very much. Regarding the action to address the liquidity problem, for example, and let's say the missing measures from the package, is there any update on the possible timeline? Because if I remember correctly, the ministers asked a wider range of measures for mid-September. We are the 16th of September, so are they coming in the coming days, or we have to wait for long? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, this is a question which would be for Dan. Technically speaking, it's energy related, but it's other mechanisms that we are introducing which would be more under his remit. I don't think he will have much to say at this stage, other than we are working at full speed. All hands are on the deck in order to be able to proceed with additional elements of the package as soon as possible, but we do not have a precise update or a precise point in time to give you. You know, this is not our style, but it will be rapid. Anything else that you may want to ask today on energy, because Tim is offering his services? I don't see any more questions, so thank you, Tim. Do you have any other questions for us today on other matters? Christian, essayons encore une fois.
Est-ce que vous m'entendez?
Ça va mieux.
Ah, c'est déjà bien. En fait, je voulais poser une question pour revenir sur les déclarations de Mme von der Leyen, qui a annoncé que l'aide de l'Union européenne serait quasiment illimitée. Et en fait, je me pose la question sur le budget de l'Union européenne, qui s'avère maintenant assez serré. Et je sais que vous allez avoir une révision, vous allez faire une proposition. Je voudrais savoir si vous avez commencé à travailler sur cette révision et si vous avez une idée de l'ordre de grandeur de ce que vous allez demander aux États membres de remettre au pot pour pouvoir éviter de racler les fonds de tiroir comme ça a été fait pour l'instrument pour la défense, ou de vous retrouver à demander aux États membres de cautionner des prêts parce qu'ils sont obligés de donner la garantie parce que vous n'y arrivez plus au niveau du budget. Merci.
Merci beaucoup pour la question, Christian. Effectivement, la présidente l'a dite de maintes fois et elle va continuer à le dire, que nous allons soutenir l'Ukraine de toutes les manières qui nous sont possibles, y compris bien évidemment avec du soutien financier, aussi longtemps que l'Ukraine aura besoin de nous. Mais en ce qui concerne la question précise, si on a déjà lancé la révision du midterm du cadre financier pluriannuel, je peux te dire que c'est quelque chose sur lequel nous sommes concentrés de manière structurelle, si tu veux, pour être préparés à mettre sur la table le moment venu les propositions. Et évidemment que les réflexions sur nos priorités les années à venir, que ce soit évidemment, comme on a discuté, pour soutenir l'Ukraine ou sur les autres parties importantes de notre travail, font partie de cette réflexion. Donc, le moment venu, on va mettre sur la table le paquet des propositions et on entamera les débats avec les États membres. Mais maintenant, tous les développements politiques qui ont lieu en Europe, y compris bien évidemment sur l'Ukraine, font partie de nos réflexions qui seront le fondement de ce travail et de cette proposition. Mais je n'ai rien de concret à ajouter sur les timings à ce stade-là. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions à ce sujet? Je n'en vois pas de main levée. And Lawrence will try his luck once more. Let's see if it works this time. Lawrence, are you there? It's still not possible. So, in the meantime, I see that Christian has his hand up. So, Christian, you have a follow-up question. Let's take that first.
Non, ce n'est pas une question de suivi. C'est une question sur les propos enthousiastes d'Adalbert en ouverture de Bill Day. Est-ce que je peux la poser ou j'attends?
Tu peux la poser, bien évidemment. Enthousiaste est le mot juste.
Oui, parce que en fait, je suis assez perplexe en ces moments d'économie d'énergie pour que l'on préconise et que l'on soutienne l'utilisation de vélos et de trottinettes électriques qu'il faut recharger alors qu'effectivement on a des problèmes d'électricité. Est-ce qu'il ne serait pas judicieux de demander à ce qu'on mette entre parenthèses ces joujoux qui permettent de faciliter la vie et d'utiliser les vraies bicyclettes, les vraies trottinettes, et c'est-à-dire le muscle, les mollets et pas le moteur électrique qui facilite la tâche. Merci.
La question, Christian, si tu me demandes à moi un bon petit vélo à l'ancienne et une trottinette comme mes enfants utilisent encore, ça irait bien aussi, mais évidemment que ça dépend aussi des distances et de la topologie de l'endroit où tu dois arriver. Mais Adalbert va continuer le dialogue pour t'apporter des éléments de réponse.
Merci beaucoup, Christian. J'imagine qu'il y a un côté, de blague dans ta question, mais elle est évidemment sérieuse. La question de comment économiser l'énergie dans la mesure du possible, tout en gardant une mobilité suffisante, notamment dans les villes, est quelque chose qui nous préoccupe beaucoup. Je t'envoie peut-être pour vraiment le détail à notre stratégie sur la mobilité durable et intelligente que nous avons publiée. Et là-bas, tu verras aussi quelques éléments en particulier sur la mobilité urbaine. En très très bref, je pense que évidemment nous pouvons nous focaliser sur la meilleure efficacité possible de nouveaux modes de transport urbains tels que les trottinettes ou les vélos. Évidemment, il faut que ces modes de transport soient le plus efficaces possible en termes d'énergie. Il n'en reste pas moins que le mode de transport qui utilise de loin le plus d'énergie, et en particulier d'énergie fossile, reste la voiture. Et c'est sur ce mode-là que nous nous concentrons en priorité absolue. Et donc le remplacement de ce mode de transport à la fois souvent inefficace et polluant par de nouveaux modes de transport plus actifs et plus efficaces est une voie essentielle pour atteindre nos objectifs.
Merci beaucoup Adalbert. Je pense que Christian a une question de suivi. Vas-y, Christian.
Oui, Adalbert, je concède le fait qu'effectivement, il faut éviter d'utiliser les énergies fossiles. Et je suis tout à fait partisan de laisser ma voiture au garage sans aucun problème pour me déplacer en ville. Mais aujourd'hui, où on demande aux gens de faire attention, de n'allumer qu'une plaque de gaz et pas les 4 en même temps à 19h, c'est assez extraordinaire de continuer à dire mais voilà, utilisez vos vélos électriques, utilisez vos trottinettes électriques et ça pullule. Et on ne manque pas de carburant. En revanche, on manque d'électricité et de moyens de produire de l'électricité autrement qu'avec des énergies fossiles. Donc ce serait peut-être pas mal aussi d'appeler à une journée de mobilité juste traditionnelle, le vélo et la trottinette d'Anna, plutôt que le vélo et la trottinette de Bobo.
Merci beaucoup Christian. Voilà une pensée auquel on va dédier un peu de réflexion. Évidemment, peut-être une journée de la marche à pied, c'est une possibilité pour les années à venir. Nous comprenons ce que tu veux dire. Je pense qu'Adalbert a apporté des éléments de réponse complexes sur les parties que nous pouvons couvrir. Il y a beaucoup de logique qui s'applique dans l'intention que nous avons à soutenir la semaine de la mobilité soutenable. Et évidemment qu'en ce qui concerne l'utilisation du courant électrique et l'impératif que nous avons en Europe de réduire l'utilisation de l'électricité, ça passe aussi par la possibilité de charger nos appareils à des moments différents quand il n'y a pas le pic des consommations. Donc il y a évidemment beaucoup d'idées qui se mettent en œuvre et qui peuvent contribuer à une utilisation judicieuse de l'électricité afin d'éviter les risques des blackouts en Europe, et ça fait aussi partie des idées que nous avons mises sur la table, l'idée qu'il faut réfléchir à utiliser nos appareils électriques de telle manière, de les programmer de telle manière pour éviter qu'on les utilise tous en même temps, parce que c'est ça qui pourrait être aussi un problème important dans l'utilisation judicieuse de nos ressources. Mais évidemment, tout ça, ça fait partie d'un débat qu'on est prêt à avoir avec toi et avec tout le monde en Europe. Merci Adalbert. Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres questions pour nous aujourd'hui? Lawrence, let's give it a try once more. He changed his device. He's trying from his mobile phone. Let's see if that's better. Still not better. All
yes,
right.
Dana, can you hear me? I wasn't given the option. Hooray.
There you are. Go ahead.
Third time lucky. I apologise. Dana, I have two questions, one for you and one for probably Peter. The one for you, and apologies for not asking this yesterday, but I know it didn't come up, is the President spoke in her State of the Union speech about having a convention in Europe for reforms, treaty change. And she didn't give any kind of timeline as to when she thought this would be appropriate. And I wonder if you have a timeline, or if she in the past has indicated a timeline on that. So that is the question for you. And then I have one on a Borrell statement that I can leave for Peter, perhaps.
For the question, Lawrence, indeed, you have seen the reference of the President in the State of the Union speech regarding the convention. The President also praised the process which has led to a more inclusive way of introducing citizens' views in our reflections about our priorities in Europe through the conference on the future of Europe, and the fact that we found the process very useful, and we will try to keep a way of involving citizens in our reflections and in shaping our debates in Europe through citizens' panels, which will now become a regular feature of our policymaking in the European Union. In relation to the convention specifically, there is no timeline that we have in mind, but we are very happy to work with the European Parliament and the other institutions in order to identify the best way and the best moment to launch the work of the convention. Peter, it's you for the next part of the question from Lawrence, but first we want to hear it.
Great, thank you. Dana, I would simply ask you whether that's something that the President would like to get started during her period of office on the convention. But my question for Peter is, there was a statement issued on Albania and the cyber attacks on Albania yesterday, I think by the High Rep, if not the spokesperson, where we said that we stand by Albania, and we condemn these cyber attacks. It didn't mention Iran, which the Albanians and others, including the US, have said were behind the cyber attacks. And I wondered why, whether that was because we don't believe necessarily that it was Iran, even though Eddie Rama and the State Department say that it was, or whether this was a diplomatic nicety not to offend the Iranians because of the nuclear talks. Thanks.
Thank you, Lawrence, and happy you managed to make it to switch on your sound. Well, there is a third option also, and the third option is that when it comes to cyber attacks, the EU as organization is not doing the attribution. We expressed our solidarity and our full support to Albania and to all our partner countries who are exposed to attacks like this, because we condemn this malicious behavior in the cyberspace, but the European Union as such is not doing the attribution.
Thank you, Peter. In relation to the first question, Lawrence, all I can tell you today is that, as I said, the President believes that this is it's now time to start discussing about the convention. But as for the timing, of course, you would be happy if the other institutions feel that we are in a position to launch it before the end of her mandate. She would be more than happy, obviously, to engage and to have it planned and launched. But I do not have anything more precise that I can tell you about that at this stage. Are there any additional questions for Peter, as he's now on stage? I see that Oliver's hand is up. I wonder if it's a question for Peter. So if it's for Peter, keep it up. Otherwise, take it down, please. There we go. Oliver, who didn't have sound problems before, has now sound problems. I'm sorry, Oliver, we cannot hear. Décidément. Let's try again with Oliver.
Hello, do you hear me now? Does it work? Hello, maybe it works now.
Yes, we are sorry not to see you, but we can now hear you. Go ahead.
That's very old. On the convention, a follow-up to Lawrence, would the President prefer to follow this process of a convention that is opened now in her first mandate during her second mandate?
Thank you very much, Oliver. As you know, as an old hag, I am not going to engage with your question for reasons that you know very well yourself. Are there any additional questions on this matter, on the convention? Right now? That is not the case either. Right now? That is not the case either. So thank you, Peter. And I only see one hand up, and that is David Price's hand. Let's try to take David.
Thank you, Donna. David Price, Your Democracy. I'd like to get something on the record in relation to the Freedom of Media Act. The European Union and various institutions subsidizes a lot of news organizations, either directly or indirectly, or through newsrooms or through advertising and so on. And over the years, we've seen a massive increase in the budget of the European Union, and little discussion about what's going on, and also the transparency of some of the institutions. The debate has declined about pan-European elections to the Parliament and how the Commission has been selected. So I'd like to know if the Commission will publish the amount of money which is given to media organizations directly or indirectly, and the names of the organizations which receive these, so the public debate on responsibility and taxation can be probably furnished.
Thank you very much for your very broad question, David. Johannes will try to cover some ground that you laid before us in relation to our support for media organizations, but everything which is linked to your other associated angles in relation to taxation and so on, these are not necessarily questions for us. So, Johannes, what can you say?
Yeah, thank you, Dana, and thank you, David. It's not so easy to cover your question because it's quite broad. But to start with, yes, of course, we publish the amounts that we spend. I mean, every year, and Balázs will be able to tell you more how this works in general for the EU budget, but of course also for the media calls. On the fact sheet on the Media Freedom Act, there you have some examples on projects that we support to finance to support media freedom and pluralism. In the EU, I will not go through them because it's online. You can read this for yourself. We have had just recently published the Daily News, for example, to recall the support to the European Newsroom that was opened, I believe, last week or the week before last week by Vice Presidents Jourova and Skinas. We, of course, also publish and inform regularly about the amount of money that is spent under the multimedia actions. This is the biggest chunk of the money, if you want. There are calls, for example, I mean, there's a certain amount that goes to Euronews, for example, and this amount is decreasing, and there are more and more open calls to have more competition on this program. And I'm happy to go through all this, but the short answer is yes. There's full transparency, of course, on where the money goes and how it's attributed, and as I just said, we will have more and more open calls, especially on Euronews. We also said that the framework agreement that we agreed for 3 years is the last one that will be agreed, and then will all be up to open calls. So there again, full transparency and also an open competition about the best ideas and projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johannes. And of course, that goes for all the expenses from the EU budget that we cover on whatever topic, not just for media. That leads us seamlessly to the next event in the press room today, which is the technical briefing on the Media Freedom Act, which is going to start very soon. So stay tuned for that one. Our experts are getting ready for you. Thank you very much, and see you next week.
Hast du